my wife might be getting too close to her ex-husband. My wife 45F was married to Bob 46M for almost a decade. They got divorced 12 years ago. There is a story behind it. Bob and my wife were college sweethearts. They got married very young and have been happy. However, tragedy struck, and Bob got into an accident, which led him to be paralyzed from the waist down. My wife was 29, and Bob was 30 back then. My wife took care of him for 3 years. But at the end, she just gave up. She told Bob that she could not do this anymore. She knows she sounds selfish, but she always wanted kids. But Bob cannot have children after the accident. She wanted to get a divorce, but promised him that she would always be there for him. She just wants to be selfish for once. Bob, although he was upset, understood. They split amicably. My wife stood by her promise and still visited Bob. She was still a part-time caretaker for him before she met me. I met her 2 years after she got divorced. While we were dating, she made her situation with Bob clear and said that she would continue to see him. I know a lot of guys would be skeptical about this, but I just loved her the moment I saw her. Her kindness and compassion towards others are what drew me towards her. After we became official, she only went to see Bob once a week. Sometimes even twice. I did not mind then. In fact, I liked her ex very much. He didn't treat me like I was the other man. He was always welcoming towards me and even showed me his library. I always felt bad for what happened to him. He was a great man, and life has just betrayed him. When we got married, I could still see the sadness in his eyes, although there was a mix of emotions from him. I always felt that Bob never stopped loving my wife, and to some degree, my wife still has feelings for him. I know she loves me a lot. She has always treated me like I'm her king, and always showed her love to me. Seriously, I am really lucky to have her in my life. Together, we have 2 children, 7M and 5F. My kids are also close with Bob. Everything was fine until a few months ago, when we got the news that Bob has cancer. It was at the last stage, and he might not even survive a full year. But there is still possibility. The news really shattered my wife. She had stopped eating properly, and was being her usual cheerful self. I understand it. But here is a part where I am a little uncomfortable. She now visits him very often. Most of the time, I will be there with her. And then, a few weeks after the discovery, she told me she wanted to shift to his house. She told me that Bob feels lonely, and that his siblings have not cared about him since his accident. And it will be better if she just stays with him. I objected. We had an argument and reached the compromise that we were both going to stay. So I've been staying at Bob's house for 2 weeks now. 4 days ago, we were all having dinner, and after we were finished, I decided to do the dishes. My wife and Bob were chatting. The conversation was like this. Bob, I really missed this. I miss talking to you during the good times. My wife, me too. Remember one time we talked so much that we were late for work the next day? It wasn't even important. Bob, what happened to us, Lily? I mean, we were something. People would use us as an example. I miss you a lot. I never thought that when I was ending, you wouldn't be my wife anymore. My wife, I know. At one point, I thought that too. But life had other plans. I mean, I love you, but I love my family more. It was not the same after your accident. It is as if they forgot that I was in the kitchen and listening to their conversation. My wife was normal after that. We went to bed and kissed each other goodnight. Between these, she wanted to make love to me, but I just rejected her. I don't know how to feel about all of this. I trust my wife. I know she is a strong woman with good morals. She will never cheat on me. I know she is just sympathetic towards Bob, because their relationship went beyond just being exes. They are best friends. I feel like an intruder between them. And I think no matter what my opinion is about all of this, I will always be the bad guy. Comments. Beneficial Syrup 869. You're not the bad guy in a way. Know that. You need to talk to your wife about what you heard. Then you need to get counseling with her and possibly Bob. When Bob does pass, you want to have everything settled, because she may start saying SHT like, I lost the most important man to me. And then you're going to be severely pushed over the edge. OP, therapy sounds good. I guess I knew deep down that this would come. Farmer Scrooge. This story makes me sad for all of you. It's understandable. She's been upfront about this with you. She loves him and feels guilty that she couldn't stay with him and have the life she wanted. It's very sad. You would not have your wife if not for his accident. I wouldn't like this arrangement. It would be very uncomfortable. But you did sign up for this. How are your kids processing all of this? OP. They are mostly sad. Bob is getting weaker every second. They don't know he will be dying. But they are happy to see Bob. Update. 1 day later. All right. I took some of the advice that you guys gave me. Although I was disappointed to see so many emotional people calling me and my wife names without even trying to understand the situation. This will be a long one. Before I give an update, I want to make a few things clear. My wife is awful because she abandoned her husband. No, I disagree with that. There is a difference between terminating a marriage and abandoning it. She didn't abandon Bob. She was right by his side. She was just not his wife. I can understand why. She was 29 when this happened. At 29, people are still starting their lives. But her life and her husband's life ended there. You expect her to give up her life, her hopes, and her dreams. And what then? Will she resent Bob for the rest of her life? Caretaking can be exhausting. She was emotionally, physically, and financially drained while she was taking care of Bob. Would you have still expected her to give up her life if this happened when she was 21? It's not like she didn't try. They went to therapy and did counseling, but there was no romance or intimacy. They just grew apart because they both had different dreams. Despite all of that, she was still in his life. She still took care of him. She could have disappeared after her divorce, but she didn't. That's what you call abandonment. Also, the reason I didn't give all the details was because this was not about her old marriage. But now I'm making it clear because people are assuming things. I know most of your things are black and white. But from a logical perspective, I don't think she is wrong. My wife and Bob are having an emotional affair. Also no. People who have affairs are secretive. My wife was never like that. She was always upfront and honest about her relationship with Bob, and how she would still want to care about him. I do not think there is an affair. Just because she said she loved him, so what? She says I love you to her kids, her friends, and even my mother. That doesn't mean she is having an affair with all of them. She has kept a boundary between Bob and her. She doesn't love him romantically, but like a friend or family member. She doesn't have her own family. She has been in NC with her Osip family since she was 18. Bob was the only family she had ever known. If my wife wanted kids, why didn't she just adopt or do IVF? Like I said in my previous post, she was financially drained. IVF costs a lot here, and adoption with a disabled parent is hard. The agencies hesitate to adopt a child when one parent is not functional. Then again, they would still need money. My wife wanted children of her own, and if they went either way, she would have been the one taking care of the baby most of the time, along with her husband. Bob almost went broke during all the caretaking. It wasn't until a few years ago that he started a remote job that allowed him to stay at home and earn. My wife will leave me if the same thing happens to me. I doubt it. But even if she does, I would understand it. We talked about this before getting married. If we have tried every possible option, then one of us can divorce. I do not want to be a burden to my own wife. And we are both in our 40s. We have pretty much accomplished every goal in life. So if tragedy does strike, then we are prepared. Bob loves my wife. He could. But there's not much I can do about it. I mean, I cannot order him to stop loving. But he does have some feelings for her. Whether it's limerence or not, I do not know. Though Bob was in a long-term relationship for 5 years with a girl, I do not think his love for my wife is the same as romantic love. What about my kids? Our kids are here for a while, and they live with their grandmother. I do not see why people are acting like we abandoned our kids. Our kids love Bob. They do not know Bob is my wife's ex-husband. They only know that Bob is my wife's friend. They are not mature enough to understand it. Now on to the update. I took your advice. I just wanted to do the talk when she wasn't stressed. I texted my wife to meet us at our house, not Bob's. I ordered her favorite food and set up the table. When she arrived, she was surprised to see the setup, and I just told her that since she has been stressed lately, I wanted to do something good for her. I called my mother. The kids are with her. Bob is staying at the hospital today, so he is fine too. And she can relax. She was happy and thanked me. We talked about our lives, and she vented about her job and everything that's been going on. Then I dropped the bomb about her conversation with Bob. I told her about the conversation she was having with Bob and how it made me feel. Well, I like Bob, and I know she loves me too. But I cannot help but imagine her wanting to be with him. And it's really like a stab. Though I do appreciate her wanting to help Bob, I want to enforce boundaries. I cannot live forever in her ex's house. We have our own house. She needs to think about our kids too. I feel like day by day, I'm losing her. This is just my concern, not my insecurity. I expected her to flip out and become defensive, but she just cried a lot. She said that she didn't mean to hurt me. She knows she went too far with wanting to stay with Bob. She says she doesn't want Bob to feel alone. That's why she proposed it. And she feels sorry for not listening. She didn't mean to hurt me. She has been thinking about her living situation. I told her it wasn't enough. I wanted us to talk to a therapist. This whole thing is just a burden for me. She got scared and said, "Why? Nothing's wrong with us." I told her I wanted to do this. Just make sure we are on the same page, and there are no hard feelings on either side. Then I asked her if she still wished to be with Bob. Because if he hadn't had the accident, they would still be together. She told me she has wasted time thinking about, what if? She knows we'd probably never meet, or she and Bob could have divorced for a different reason. The thing is, she doesn't want to think about it. What happened just happened. She loves me and doesn't want to be with Bob. Bob has a place in her heart as a friend and a family member. When she says she loves Bob, it doesn't mean she is in love with him. She hasn't thought about him in a romantic way since their divorce. The only reason she stuck with Bob was because they promised each other that no matter what happened, they would be with each other, even as friends. She proposed that we move back home and only stay one day a week at Bob's house. She might make occasional visits when it is needed. I agreed, but I still insisted on going to therapy. She agreed to it. We have yet to tell Bob about the news, but I'm sure he will understand. And before you ask, yes, Bob has a full-time nurse. He has family, but they hardly ever visit him. I'll probably not make an update again. And I'm done. No matter how much I try to explain it to you guys, you will only stick to seeing things in black or white. Apparently, in the Reddit world, two exes remaining good friends is considered an emotional affair. They don't need context to understand things. I'm also very drained emotionally. Bob is also my friend. Seeing him get weaker every day just makes me feel hopeless too. Comments. Beneficial Syrup 869. I am glad you had that conversation with her. I am rooting for you. And yes, therapy. I always feel like therapy is like an oil change. It is maintenance. If you don't do it, you're screwed. But if you keep at it, you'll be running smoothly. I have a few therapists in my family, so it may be their influence. She may need individual therapy too. There is a lot to unpack for her. OP, yes. We talked about that. Sorry, I forgot to mention that in my post. I told her that she needed to face the ugly reality that Bob might not be in our lives. She needs to prepare for that. She needs therapy for herself to navigate those feelings. She agreed to that. Yelsey. This is how mature, reasonable adults handle life situations. Your wife's conversation with Bob wasn't okay, but the way you handled it and her reaction mean there's a path forward. I wish you guys and Bob the best of luck. OP, I agree. But she told me it was just nostalgia. But the conversation we had was needed. It made something clear. Thank you for watching the video.